Mr. Crispin here once again, and welcome to my workshop. Now, could the remaining visitors for the Mr. Crispin tour bus please make yourselves known? I'm still missing 4 individuals. Mr. Axelrod, yes, okay. Mrs. Throttlebody, thank you. And Mr. Pearshape, right. Now that just leaves one more. There you are. Right. Please don't worry about your bags, Jefferson will take care of those, but could the 4 of you now make your way to the bus and inform the driver you are here, because with that concluded we are pretty much ready and it's time to travel 90 miles north. So here we are in Tony's workshop, and as you can see there's plenty to look at. Over the course of this video we're going to be covering some of Tony's projects, model engineering wise and car wise, and then we'll have a look around this great collection of machinery. So thank you, Tony, for having us today.
That's a pleasure.
Tony was my first engineering instructor back when I did a 14 to 16 school day release engineering course, and so it's great to come to his home workshop and see what's going on here. So let's start with a look around. As you can see in this garage, Tony is not short of equipment. He's got everything, even the kitchen sink. Yeah, it's surprisingly light actually, isn't it?
It is.
Easy to... So Tony, these are your 3 works in progress, and they show a lot of work, but model engineering is actually something you've come to later in life. So what's been your engineering interest so far?
So I started off teaching at Archbishop Holgate School in York, which I'm a former pupil of Archbishop's, and Jerry Goodwin, who was the tutor at the time, he inspired me to go into teaching. And in fact he inspired me in lots of ways and said I ought to go to Loughborough, so I did, and trained as electronics and mechanical, but electronics as a specialist.
Yeah.
And then when I left I taught at the school 11 to 18 and then on to apprenticeships.
Yeah.
Which is where I met you, because you joined as a young apprentice, and I was then team leader for mechanical engineering
at York College.
At York College.
And at that time you were into heavier stuff, cars,
yeah,
stationary engines.
I spent most of my life with cars. Been restoring classic cars since, I don't know, 1975 probably, when I first started.
Yeah.
And then I had an excursion into stationary engines,
yeah,
which have always been a bit of a fascination for me. And I had a Ruston Hornsby stationary engine which weighed 3 tonne. But when you get old, you can't move them about anymore. And
but so, you're not old.
I am. I taught you. So I started going into model making then.
Yeah, so
but I'm still doing classic cars as well.
Model engineering has come to you in retirement, but yes, you've certainly got into it. Now, when I interviewed Richard, he made the point he likes to work on one thing at a time, but you actually have a counter argument. You prefer to work on multiple things, and just go over your reasoning for that.
Well, I get to a point where I don't quite understand what's going on with the mechanical side of the project, and so I tend to get a little bit bored with it, and so I move on to something else while I figure out what's going on with the project. So for instance, the steam wagon at the moment is on hold because it's got joy valve gear, and although everything else is complete to get it to run, I just haven't done the joy valve gear, and I stopped about a year ago, mainly because I didn't understand quite how joy valve gear worked. And since then I've done a bit of research and sort of got my head around what's happening, and so I shall get back to that, but while I'm thinking about it I move on to something else. And the same happened with the gardener, because I couldn't work out.
And the gardener is an example of one of your completed model engineering projects.
So that's now complete, but it spent 2 years sat there doing nothing because I couldn't work out the governor mechanism. One of the problems is with an internal combustion engine, the valve gear, you expect it to open sharply. If you look at car cams, they're very pear-shaped cam, and they just open for a small amount of travel. When you start using steam engine technology, or at least steam engine technology was all they had at this time. The movement of the valve gear is tremendous, and you only want to be able to touch that, so you can see there's a lot of wasted motion.
Yeah.
If you look at I mean, first of all, my instincts restoring classic cars was to set the valve clearances to be, 10 thou, which is what you would normally do, and in fact, that's a good quarter of an inch. So instinctively I was wrong in the first place, because I was setting it as I thought it should be.
Well, you got there.
Once I figured it out, I finished it. So that's now done. I've now got my head around the joy valve gear, so that's probably the next thing in line. The mini traction engine is a long-term project. I mean, I always say I come to model engineering in recent life. I made the boiler when I was teaching at Archbishop, so that's probably I left there in 85, so it's got to be pre-85.
Right, so the boiler was done, and then
nothing else.
Nothing
just the
else.
boiler.
And in recent years you've put the rest of it together.
Yeah.
And this stationary engine's a fairly recent
That's
project.
3 months into the build on that now. I haven't touched it for about a month because of other commitments that Derwent Valley, etc. It's just other things have taken its time, but I'm back onto it. In fact, I'm doing a talk this afternoon to the U3A, and I'm taking it along with me, so there was a bit of a push this week to get a bit more of it back together.
Okay, moving outside, we're looking at your biggest project at the moment, in both sense of the words. What's this?
It's a 1948 Rover 75 P3. A model they made just for 2 years in 1948 and 1949.
And this has a little story attached to it, which I thought was very nice. What's the story?
So, where we used to live, the next door neighbour but one, her son-in-law used to visit regularly, and we got we were good friends, and lived in Inverness, and he bought this car in Inverness, and he used to come down to York in it, which is no mean feat, and when we got married 37 years ago, we went up to Inverness on honeymoon, and he took us, Ellen and I, out in his car, and we went up to Dunrobin Castle from Inverness. So we did quite a few miles in it, and then unfortunately he became ill, and he started to work on the car. He wanted a bit of body work doing and things, and he pulled it apart, and then he had this ill health, and it went under a sheet for about 30 years, and sadly just before lockdown Dave passed away, and his son was going to take on the car to do repairs, and decided it was just too much for him, and he rang me up and said, would you like the car? So we couldn't get it down from Inverness because of lockdowns, so we had to wait till things eased up a bit, and then we got it down. I said I was never doing another classic car again, but because of the history of this one,
You are.
I am.
Looking at your collection here, Tony, we've got the garage split in two, milling and shaping down this side and turning down the other side. So let's have a look at some of these machines up close. Standing next to the ubiquitous portable bandsaw, we have a Harrison milling machine. So what sort of age is this, Tony?
I think it's probably 70s. I've never found the serial number yet to date it, but I think that's where it's from, around that period of time. So it's got a clutch up on the top. That also kills the power feeds, everything as well, so even when you put the clutch back, if the power traverse is on, that gets killed. I've got a patent method of getting the belt down. It's too much like hard work these days, cranking that up and down. It's power feed in that direction.
Fitted a DRO.
Fitted a DRO, so it's all my DROs are from the same company, so they all work the same, but it's quite a nice DRO in the sense that
And you have a lot of faith in these DROs, you fitted quite a few of them.
I have,
What's the actual DRO?
So it's an EMSI limited DRO. They've got a nice graphical display, so when that's a PCD, which is actually used for doing the studs on the Wyvern.
Yeah.
And so you set it up and you can see the graphical there, so we set it up and then you can see you move the dot to where you want to be.
Very clever.
And then you obviously got the readout next to it, so you can get it per spot on.
Looks like a good sized machine for its size, and fairly unusual to have almost lathe bedways. I wonder if Harrison made use of tooling they already had.
I suspect so, because I think it's probably the same as the Harrison L5s, etc.
Right, so moving on from the Harrison, you have a shaping machine.
So a Boxwood 8-inch shaper. I had an Elliott 10M.
Yeah, I seem to recall you had the Elliott and you sold it because you didn't need it and wanted the room.
That's right, and I sold it to Richard Gibbon. Richard bought it. That was ex-Joseph Rowntree School, Elliott 10M. And I made the space, and then I was offered a Boxwood 8-inch at a price that I couldn't refuse. And so I've now got a shaper again.
And you've used it for a few keyways, etc.
Keyways and bits and pieces. I don't use it a great deal, but when you need it, it's handy.
There. And next to that we have a Tom Senior milling machine. So these machines were very popular here, and what sort of era is this from, Tony?
So it was 1948, supplied new to Joseph Rowntree School in York. I've got the bill of sale from the City of York Council for it. And when they closed the school and built a new one, most of the machines were disposed of, and I bought this one. It was in quite a state, and I've rebuilt it. And I wanted to rebuild it because the first milling machine that we got at Archbishop's was a Tom Senior, bought new.
Yeah.
So it has a soft spot in my heart, so I bought the Tom Senior.
And on the vice we can see some pieces in bronze. What's this?
Well, obviously it's been in a school and it's had a lot of abuse, and somebody sometime it's been powered into the end of the travel and it had stripped the worm gear. So there was a couple of teeth pulled out.
Yeah.
So I needed a new gear, and because this is a very early machine, they are different to the later ones. The later ones have an oil bath for it to run in, and so they're quite unique are these gears. And so I started off to make a new one, and that was my first attempt, which was an idea that I was going to turn the gear off there and shrink that on. But in the end, I turned a whole new gear. So I made a hob.
Made a hob in silver steel by screw cutting.
Yeah, and gashed it, and
hardened and tempered it.
Put it onto the M300 lathe and let it find its own way.
And you hobbed it using the free hobbing method.
Yeah.
And that is now within the mechanism doing its job.
It works perfectly. And the power, that's the engagement for it.
And the last machine in this row is the Old Faithful Boxford Union pillar drill. Now most secondary schools had one of these in it, or at least one. And where did this one come from?
So it came out of the York Sixth Form College. It was condemned under health and safety because it had no guards, no emergency stops. You could open the guard, put your finger in the belts.
And I seem to recall that they're a smooth runner.
They're a grand machine. I converted it from 3-phase, I put a single phase motor on it.
Yeah.
It's got a Morse taper 1, which is unusual.
Oh right, yes. Moving down to the next line then, let's have a look at turning. Here is a lathe you use for your smaller work. It's a Boxford, popular with people in the UK. What would you like to tell us about this?
So it's an AUD Mark III. I was quite specific when I wanted to buy another lathe to replace a Myford. So I spent quite a lot of time looking for one. Peter Slay, who was at the time technical sales manager for Boxford, and I searched the country and I found this one in Scotland, and Peter and I went up and fetched it.
And you're allowed to be controversial. How do you feel, in your opinion, these compare to a Myford?
Much more robust in my opinion. This is a metric version, and it's a 5-inch swing, which is the latest bigger version than the 4.5s that they did beforehand. So yeah, I can be controversial, but I much prefer this.
And Tony, why on earth have you got a boring head in your tailstock?
Well, you know what it's like when you have to offset a tailstock for taper turning, and then try and get it trammed back in again, and it's a nightmare. So, it's not a nightmare. It just takes hours. And so, if I want to taper turn, I hold one turn in between centres, and I can offset this centre using the boring head.
Very clever. And there's an example of some of this work you've been doing recently on the stationary engine.
Yeah, so the Gardner conrod and the Wyvern conrod were taper turned using this method.
Very clever. Moving up from the Boxford is a Harrison. Now this Harrison actually has some relevance to me, as when I was one of Tony's pupils at York College, these are the machines we used. Had a bank of 8 of them, and these were used for many of the apprentice training pieces and associated qualifications. So what do you use this for, Tony?
So if it's anything big, basically, I use this one, and also because it's done imperial screw cutting as well as metric. If I need to cut an imperial thread, I'll do it on here rather than put conversion gears into the Boxford.
And am I right in thinking this one has dual reading dials?
It does.
So dual reading dials are an interesting invention, and they allow you to work in metric or imperial, you know, without modern digital readouts. And what exactly is going on?
So you turn the outer collar, so at the moment it's reading in thous, and you turn the outer collar, and then it reads in metric. The same on this one, so it's a thou, and that's it, turn it round to there, and you've got millimetres onto
Very
there.
clever.
So there's differential gears in there, so you can change it from metric to imperial. Not that you need it with a DRO.
So that concludes our look around Tony's workshop and projects. So Tony, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
I've enjoyed seeing all these projects, and also I've enjoyed catching up with Tony. I'm very grateful on 2 accounts. First of all, besides all the general tuition, Tony taught me filing. Age 14 onwards I did a 2-year course which involved a lot of filing.
It did. Performing engineering operations.
Yeah, Tony and the workshop assistant Nigel spent a lot of time doing filing, drilling, riveting. And the second point is that through the 2 years I was there, when everybody went home at 4 o'clock, Tony used to stay on and let me loose in the college workshops, and it was in those workshops I struck the first blow on the locomotive. And who knows, that locomotive may one day be finished, so if it is, you can be the first passenger.
Thank you. A bit like my projects, one day we'll get them finished.
One day. But no, thank you for watching. I hope you found this interesting, and see you on the next video.